This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by the Genesis Company, coming at you Monday morning. It's December 18th. The Wolves are in Miami this evening. They play a Heat team that's actually looks like pretty much at full strength. And we have Chris Hine here with us, as we do pretty much every Monday morning. And Chris is actually in Miami. It looks like actually in the stadium, the press room there.
Very luxurious.
Yep. Yes. We haven't done an episode since that Pacers game, so I do want to talk about Ant and Cat kind of combining to go for 77 in that game. But because you are there in Miami, you just attended shoot-around. I was thinking about this before. I'm like, I wonder how many people, when we say, oh, like Chris is at shoot-around, like if they even know what that means. Can you just take a minute and like describe, okay, this is my Monday morning. I woke up this morning. I am in Miami. I am at what is it? What does that look like?
So it's always every shoot around is its own little adventure in a way, I like to say, because security in every building is not expecting you to come into the building, right? Or usually they're not. So number one, in any sport I've covered, whether it was hockey or the NBA, first of all, your first task is finding the entrance that you need to get to.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there for that.
How many times have we walked around buildings because you can't find the particular entrance you need to get in? And then once you're in there, the security is like, well, who the hell are you? You know, half the time. They don't have the list yet of like the visiting media that's supposed to be there that particular night. So they have to make like maybe a bunch of phone calls, get on the walkie-talkies, figure out if you should be let in the building or if you're some sort of threat, right? Who is this guy? Luckily today in Miami, they actually did have the visiting media list, which is literally just my name. And the woman who was there was like, how come it's just you on the visiting team media list? I'm like, well, that's just how it is some days. So then I always try to show up a little early because I know that this process of letting you in the building can take several minutes sometimes.
Right.
So I get in the building, you let the PR staff know that you're here. And they tell me like when shoot around is basically over. Yeah. And I can come in to the bowl of the arena.
That's an important clarification. Like I often say I go to shoot around sometimes, or I travel a little bit too, and you're like, oh, I'm at shoot around, or oh, I'm at practice. They do not let us watch the entirety of practice.
Right? No,
they're doing the game plan. Like we could be covert spies for Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. So
another layer of this was the security guy who was guarding. So they have curtains up that guard the entrances to the bowl of the arena, and the security guy was like, I don't. He's like, I can't let you in right away because I don't know that they're actually done. So then I have to text the PR staff to say, can you come let the security guy know that it's okay to I mean, everybody's just doing their jobs.
Sure.
And that's comforting to know, that all the security personnel throughout the league, they're just doing their jobs and their due diligence, to not let you in certain spaces if you haven't been, approved. So PR staff comes, lets the guy know, okay, he can come in, he's good. And then basically, usually what happens is the team is just shooting around, guys are just putting up shots. Guys are just putting up shots at that point. Today, occasionally, and today was one of those days where everybody shoots a half court shot and maybe wins a little prize. And that's always one of the most fun things to watch because it's not just the players who are eligible to shoot for.
I've seen Finch take one in that.
Well, the whole coaching staff does it. The training staff, the PR staff will shoot. The security guys will shoot. Anybody who's there basically can put up a half court shot.
What about you, man? There's probably like 20 grand in that line.
That's a line that as a media member, I'm not part of the team. I cannot do it. So I was just standing there watching as everybody put up a shot. So what happens is if somebody makes it, they win the prize. But if somebody answers it with another make, it gets canceled out.
Right.
And so I remember distinctly one time, I think it was, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, but but Finch was the one who hit the half court shot. And then maybe like 3 or 4 later, D'Lo canceled it out and negated Finch's prize money.
That's perfect.
they had a little moment there, like you son of a gun, you know.
Son of a gun.
So that's always a fun little thing that you see at shoot around sometimes.
This is just completely random. I promise we will start talking about the Timberwolves and basketball, but this is my favorite. This is my favorite story. And it's just small. I went to the Celtics came to town a day early or something. And I was back when like Kyrie Irving was on the Celtics, probably like 4 or 5 years ago or something. And they were doing the same thing, and they were in Target Center. And they're doing the half court thing, and there's just like there's music going, and it was this like Celtics group when everybody was really young, you know. And they're doing the half court thing, and kind of like where we like walk in and we kind of stand by the end of the court and you wait until interviews open up, and all the Celtics are shooting. And then I might have told the story before, but Al Horford is just kind of sitting next to where I'm standing. And he's got these big ice packs on his knee, and he's just looking at his phone. And I just like kind of like glance over, and I remember he's wearing like Timberwolves ice packs. I'm like, oh, that's like a funny picture in my mind. And then when I'm looking over, I look at it, and Al Horford was playing chess on his phone, as like the entire rest of the team is,
Listen, maybe he had a certain amount of time he had to make a move in. You never know.
I was like, this is the most Al Horford thing that I've ever seen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, again, we haven't recorded since the Wolves beat the Pacers on Saturday night. It was the first time, Chris, in a while that we've had a real Cat and Ant big game at the same time. I think Cat had 20 at halftime, Ant had 18. For sure finished 40 for Cat, 37 for Ant. It was just kind of one of those consistent drumbeat games where this is where the offense is coming from. And I've been talking a lot recently about, in our nitpicking vein of this team that has the best record in basketball. It's like, and Finch has been talking about this too. Like, what do we need more of? And Finch has said a couple times recently, like, we're average on offense. We need to have more offense. And when I've been talking about it, I've been thinking of like, okay, like what small, like Nas is a good offensive player off the bench. What sort of pairings can you get to with Cat and Ant, or like with other different players? So you have 48 minutes, you avoid those like 5-6 minute stretches where it's just like, man, that's dead offense. But the alternative is your two best offensive players, right? Just play better, or play like they did in this Pacers game more often. And so I was thinking about that after the game. I'm like, okay, well, why hasn't that been a solution I've gone to in my head? And it's because this is somewhat rare, right? That Ant and Cat have both 30 plus, 35 plus in a game. We referenced that Phoenix game from a few years ago where I think Ant had 42 and Karl had 40. I guess question for you is, can this happen more often? Or maybe why hasn't it happened as many times as, obviously we have the Karl being injured last season excuse, but can this happen more often where it's a dominant performance by the two of them?
I don't know. I mean, you look at who they beat.
That's a fact.
The circumstances kind of came together perfectly for this. An Indiana team that maybe had some tired legs from a weird travel day.
Sure. That
was already bad on defense to begin with. So it just kind of created maybe a little bit of a perfect storm for that kind of night to happen. Last year, when in the time that they did play, especially early in the season, it just never. The offense just was never really clicking with Rudy on the floor. Yeah. It's like, but I think about just the shape of the offense too. The offense is not really like designed to just get a guy going. We like to say that it's very ball movement, it's free flowing. And when you have that, it's not like you're always directing the ball to one or two guys. It's like whoever has the open shot or the open look has the license to take a shot or make a play. And that's one of the good things about
kind
the
of the idea of flow, right?
Right. It's the idea of flow. And you kind of look at what happened maybe as they were hunting shots a little bit later in that game. It's like, they kind of messed with the game a little bit. They started committing turnovers, and then Finch, pulled them eventually. So it's just not how this offense is really set up. Like, so I don't know that it's going to be a thing that happens really regularly. And how are teams defending Ant that particular night? How are teams defending Karl that particular night? I look at how Ant got going in the second quarter, and I'm like, it was kind of just pull-ups. And he hit a couple threes, and that literally just got him going.
Yeah.
That was almost like not antithetical to what the offense is trying to do. But it was kind of a little bit out of the ordinary. It was just really Ant going on a heater and having a couple heat checks go in.
Karl had the matchup, right? Like,
yeah,
that they didn't really have anybody for Karl in that game. We kind of knew that going in, and to that end, you kind of need, maybe not 40, but you kind of needed / expected, an efficient 30 game from Karl. So that one makes sense, right? They just they couldn't really take that away. Maybe they could have gotten more aggressive with doubling him. So that part of the equation makes sense. And then I think the Ant one makes sense in that, it happens sometimes, right? Where Ant just goes supernova and they're difficult shots. He joked about that a little bit after the game, where he's like, man, when Cat gets going, it's easy. He goes, my shots are tough. It's like, it's hard to make those buckets. So I guess, and it's not that Karl can only get 40 when a team doesn't have an answer for him. But the offense is going to go through him to give him the shot to get 40 a little bit more. That was on my mind as, we went to the locker room after the game, just, a game where Karl-Anthony Towns shot 25 shots. We've seen that happen many times over the years.
Yeah.
We don't see that as much anymore. So I asked Kat about that after the game. You want to hit mute on your mic just for a second while I play this clip?
A few years back, it wouldn't be all that uncommon that you would shoot 25 shots in a game. Obviously, this is a different roster.
25?
Yeah, 25 tonight. I'm just kind of curious, like, what that process has kind of been like, of like knowing that you are a main part of the offense, but not the only one, and then the role can swell and shrink.
Yeah, not the sun, but you're one of the planets.
I like that.
Yeah, just I think I've shown in my career I'm willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to make this team win as many games as possible, and to have this team be the best version of itself. So every year I have been presented with a new challenge from my rookie year to now. So we got a lot of great players in here, and my job is to figure out how to obviously be aggressive and maximize my talents for the team, but also in those talents, how can I make everyone better?
Chris, like, I really want to give Karl credit for that in just adapting that, like he said, becoming a planet rather than the sun. I don't know. I don't know if I didn't believe that could happen. I'm just impressed by how kind of actually seamless it has been. Like, Karl has just been an awesome 1B on this team for the last, I don't know, like 18 games. Kind of like had to settle into it a little bit at the beginning of the year. So it wouldn't be fair to say it's been completely seamless, but pretty much, man. I said, the turning point was kind of that Golden State game where he got to be a little bit more predominant of a planet. And then once that hit, now it does seem to be settling into a role that he seems comfortable with, which is, probably the most important factor here. But it also seems to be effective, and I just want to say, like, credit to Kat, who, again, is probably someone I nitpick as much as anyone on this team, or I have in my time here. But to see what he's doing and to adopt that mentality, I think is a lot harder. It's just a difficult thing to do, and I give him credit for that, because that seems to be as much of a reason as any that this team is as good as it's been this year.
100%. And, I think we saw kind of what rock bottom almost looked like for him after that Celtics game. 7 points, I think it was, fouls out. They still win the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I remember, kind of coming out of that game and thinking like, that game could be is Karl a part of this team's future? Like, in a sense, like, can they get by without him?
Yeah, it wasn't even like a first takey type of
right.
It was just kind of like, well, what if the things were repurposed and Nas was there and then
they could
Karl
win without him?
Yeah,
they just beat the Celtics without him. Like, what does that look like? But then, honestly, ever since that game, like, that was the last bad game I think Karl's played. Yep. They go on that road trip and he starts really playing well. Even when the team wasn't playing well, and some nights Karl would be like the bright spot. And then, of course, Ant goes down for a few. Karl picks it up, has some really nice offensive nights the last month and a half or so. And, I think that's one of the big developments of this season is Karl. It's hard to say it's a reduced role, right? Or like, and we think back to, kind of how Gerson thought of Karl, and like Karl was the son of that universe.
Intentionally, we want you to be the son. Yeah.
Right. And so now to kind of have this shift and have Karl accept it in a way where it's like, okay, we've never really talked about it in those terms, like you're the 1B to Ant's 1A. Like we don't talk about it to him like that. But I think it's kind of understood or acknowledged that that's kind of what's been happening. But Karl being as effective and as good as he is, like, this team needs that right now as currently constructed. Ant needs that because they can't, that prevents teams from loading up on Ant and affecting the offense that way. So having this version of Karl where for really a month and a half, he's been mostly under control. He's been in control of his emotions. He's given what the team has needed almost every night. They have the number one defense in the league, with him playing heavy minutes. Ask Jimmy Butler maybe if that was possible 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Karl is playing.
You can ask him tonight, Chris.
I could. We'll see if I get the chance. This is the best case scenario for how this year could have played out with Karl-Anthony Towns. Like when we talked about it coming into the season, it's like, okay, is he a candidate to be traded at the deadline? How is the season going to go? How does that affect how they view, the cap issues, the luxury tax issues beyond this year, and how will the team come out playing? This is the best timeline for all involved. They hit that timeline. And to the point where, 2 months ago before the season starts, like, we were wondering, is Karl going to be gone at the deadline or next summer or whatever, right? Now it's like unthinkable that they should consider moving him, at the deadline. Like, you gotta, if you're cooking as much as they are right now, and you're the 1 seed, and like Karl's going to be on this team
1A, 1B, Jupiter, Mars, whatever.
Everybody's getting along. It's not messing with the chemistry. The chemistry's good. The vibes are good. Everybody's happy with each other. Everybody's good teammates with each other. Like, yeah, this is the best case scenario for Karl and all involved right now.
Let's grab our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. Up on the screen, I just kind of have what's going on at Falling Knife this week. Obviously, it's a heavy Wolves week. Wolves play in Miami tonight. They play in Philly on Wednesday, back at home for the Lakers on Thursday, and then the Kings on Saturday. Those are all obviously opportunities to check out Falling Knife to go for a game, but they also have trivia that'll be happening Wednesday as well. If you just go to Falling Knife BC, they kind of are FKBC on Instagram. They post this every week, so it's, if you're looking for things to do there, that's an option. I also just want to plug their they do New Year's early, which I think is a kind of interesting event. It's like as someone who's getting a little bit older, is maybe not staying out all that late on New Year's Eve. I really like this this strategy that they have of doing New Year's Eve as early as they do. It rather than celebrating it at midnight, they do the ball drop at 8 p.m. And so the party goes from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m. That's also up on the screen here. It is $85 all you can eat and drink. Again, 6 to 10 p.m. At Falling Knife. Tickets for that are $85. I know some of you listeners went and checked this out last year. If this is something you want to do, again, go to FKBC on Instagram and you can buy a ticket from the link in their bio. All right, Chris, you mentioned Jimmy Butler earlier, and we were asking Kat about Ant and kind of the whole tandem idea. And I was thinking about it, like when Jimmy was here, Karl was like 22 and Jimmy was 28. That is the ages of Ant and Kat now too. Now Kat's a 28-year-old and Ant's the 22-year-old. And it's for sure a factor, the experience that Karl had with Jimmy that is, shifting, I think, the way in which he's willing to adapt this 1B type of role. And I just thought that this answer from him after the game on Saturday was indicative to how important Kat has learned that sort of mutual support between the stars on a team is valuable. So here's Kat on Ant.
Don't fix it,
Karl, you were at the free throw line in the fourth getting MVP chance, and Ant was like waving his hand to the crowd. And I mean, do you feel like you two cheer for each other, I guess, as much as, any star teammates do, I guess, the way that you're in each other's corner, I guess?
I mean, I just want to see him reach his potential, and my job being here so long and kind of being a vet now is just try to do whatever I can for him to reach his potential, and that's what I got to do. So I support him fully, and the support he not only provides us, but our team, teammates, every single one of us is contagious. So we're very blessed, honored to have him on AE one day. I like the shoes a lot, honestly. I've been telling him all day about it. But we all we got at the end of the day. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. So being here, so I just appreciate that. When you got someone like that who's on your side and your teammates all back you up, especially for what I've been through, it means a lot.
Again, right? That's a for me sitting there. I'm like, I'm nodding along in my head too of like, yeah, this is what is required, I think, to be great for two top players on a team is to be able to put aside whatever, not like differences in a bad way, but just like putting to the side that you are different people, right? Whether you're at different stages of life, you come from different backgrounds, whatever it might be. And I think to both Kat and Ant's credits, they see the best parts in each other, and that choice is rare. And I think you can argue is pretty powerful. Without that, and if there were more of a fight for whose team is it, this team wouldn't be as good as it has been thus far this season, and likely will be, when the season comes to a close. And again, to Karl's credit, I think the veteran player needs to initiate that privately, and then in what we can see. And as I understand it, I think both of those things has happened. He's chosen to empower Ant and believe that through success of the group, that he's going to get his flowers too. So I just think I've been kind of somewhat sleeping on this year, and here we are. It's about Christmas, and Karl has done that this year, and yeah, credit to him.
100%. And there's maybe some contract things that play into it. Both of them have gotten paid. Now,
good point. That's a good point.
Maybe that just eases, the seeing those checks coming in, like those aren't going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, right.
No matter who's 1A and who's 1B. And you look, you just need that in the NBA. And, Karl, I think realizes that, and I think Ant realizes that too.
Yeah,
like,
man.
you can't go it alone in the NBA and expect to win. Like maybe your individual numbers will be better, if you are the clear-cut 1A center of the franchise, whatever, right? But you're not going to win. You're not going to win in this landscape of the NBA. And I think Karl realizes that. I think Ant realizes that. And, I think it's just encouraging that you have this dynamic in a locker room, because we've seen it go wrong in other places as well. I mean, obviously Rudy went through it in Utah with Donovan Mitchell.
Yep. Good point.
And a dynamic that didn't quite work out, in the end. And yeah, you don't seem to have that issue here. And I think that's, it's just that chemistry. We've talked a little bit about that before. Like, Tim Connolly, whenever he's spoken to the media, has always made a point to say that, he appreciates having good locker room guys and kind of good, good vibes.
Yeah.
And he searches that out when it comes to kind of making moves and figure out who's going to be here. And I think you're seeing some of the benefits of that philosophy, just with this team overall this year. Not just those guys specifically, but overall.
Yeah, and I was thinking when you're talking about the Ant element of it, right? Like, okay, so All NBA is the top 15 players in the league now, right? And if Ant gets that, it's another like 42 million or something on his contract. And you think about it coming into the year, and what is the proposition of Ant getting that one of those All NBA spots? And it's like, it's kind of a toss up. Like 15 is a pretty high bar, we're baking in some progression from him. He was like a fringe all-star the year before, so maybe that's like you're a top 25 player in the league or something like that. It seemed reasonable that he could make that jump up into around 15, maybe 13, 12 or something like that. But the way to lock that in, money or not, right, it is to win. And so, like, for Ant, even if we're just strictly looking through the money lens and wanting that, it's like, if he didn't have Karl, like maybe Ant could average 30 a game, pretty effectively. But does that make him more likely to get that All NBA slot than averaging, an effective 25, 26 on the number one seed in the West, on the number one defense, which, for Ant too, like that's the one knock on his game kind of historically is how good or how consistent of a defender is he. And so for Ant to embrace Cat is just smart from a basketball standpoint, but from a progression in, the hierarchy of the league and the accolades that come with it, I just think this is a smart way to have gone about it on all ends. And I think just embracing a relationship with Cat is really smart. He talked about that after the game too.
And just like all year long, it seems like he's been so consistent for you guys. Just what's impressing you about how he's going about his business?
Nothing. He's been like that since I've been here. He's always been efficient, get his points, and try to do everything to help us win. He's always been like that. So nothing. It's not impressive to me. I'm used to seeing it. That's Cat. If I describe Cat, that's how I describe him. So yeah, I'm just super happy for him.
You guys get along so well. You have good chemistry. Why do you think it clicks so well?
Because we both put our pride to the side and just want to win. I think that's the main thing. A lot of people try to put us against each other, and we talk more than a lot of people think. So we super cool.
Sorry, I cut you off there before I played the video. What did you have to say?
I wasn't sure if a clip was coming or should I go.
Stuck it in there. Yeah.
I was kind of gonna bring up what Ant said because I saw the video of that last night, but I think it makes basketball sense, right? Like we talk about it making basketball sense, but when you're a young guy in the league, it doesn't always compute with young guys in the league. They want to chase the stats. They want to chase the numbers. They want to chase their contract. They want to chase the All NBA accolades, but they think the way to go about that is to get as many numbers as you can. They don't realize that, when voters are sitting down to figure out all NBA team, they're going to look at the best players on the best teams first before going down to.
It's always the tiebreaker.
The number, right? It's always a tiebreaker between the guys who are similar, and I don't think the average 21-year-old star in the NBA is not thinking like, I wonder when beat writer X sits down to fill out his all NBA team ballots, what are his criteria for that? They're not really going that deep into it, right? But what they have to realize is that winning matters for that kind of stuff. Winning matters for max contracts. It matters for all that kind of stuff. And I think Ant gets that, maybe more so than other people of his age that have
and good for him for getting that, and good for like people I'm sure have imparted that in his mind, right? Of like, hey, this is the path, like do this in tandem with Karl. This will be best for the team. This will be best for you individually. This will be best for your money and your growth as a star player.
And maybe Dane, this is maybe where the pushing of the chips into the center of the table with the Gobert trade has maybe benefited a little bit, because now you are winning and you see the effects that you can have when the two of you kind of play like this, and put your, as Ant said, kind of put your pride aside in some ways. And you're 19-5. Whereas if this team wasn't as built maybe to compete right now, is it a different dynamic between Ant and Cat? And is it more trying to take the reins of a team that's maybe a borderline playoff team, or a play-in team, or something like that? I wonder how the dynamic might be different this year if the team wasn't as successful and they weren't seeing the success that having this philosophy could have.
It was good for you to bring up the money thing right off the top too. And that was such a big factor in the Jimmy thing, is Wig and Cat both got their contract extensions, and Jimmy was at a different place in his career where he was in the, like, you could renegotiate and extend his contract to get as much money as those guys were doing. But to have done that, you would have needed to create cap space. And it was this whole, like, I would say, like, the CBA kind of screwed up the Jimmy thing as much as anything, because I don't think Jimmy properly understood what would needed to have happened sacrificially elsewhere on the roster so as to have paid him. I just remember that, obviously we were talking about writing about that a ton at the time. And that is a distinction to be made from this situation, because, like, Cat and Ant already got their money. Ant can get a little bit more if he gets all NBA, but it's almost perfect if we put the salary cap aside and the future of the second apron and all this. Even if Ant gets that money, he still will be making less every single year than Karl-Anthony Towns is, because Cat is on the Supermax.
Right.
So even if it all, like, Cat can be 1A, but he's gonna be like, my paycheck prints out first.
Still bigger than yours.
Like, that's an important factor.
And remind me, at that point in Jimmy's career, because he was in Chicago and kind of late first round draft pick.
Yeah.
I don't know, had Jimmy really been paid?
No, I think he got like a Jaden extension.
Okay.
Or like maybe like
that's right. Yeah, he did. It
wasn't a max.
It was a decent size extension, but it was not a max deal.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So
you have two guys here who have. Karl is now on his second. Will be on his second max contract. Ant will be entering his first. And it's like, okay, they've been paid. So
they're like, I've gotten every dollar I've possibly got.
And the team is literally giving them every dollar that they possibly can. So there's no, like, there's no hierarchy there in that sense. It's like, look, we are paying you both the maximum amount of dollars we can pay you, so don't worry about it.
For sure, man. It's like in other workplaces, it's why, like, salaries aren't shared. Because that creates problems. Like that is a proven out thing, and obviously these things become public in the NBA, and I think it's working out.
And just from that perspective, we've heard, and Nas kind of reemphasized this after the Dallas win. We've heard Nas kind of talk about, like, one of the reasons for the team's maturity and success this year is guys aren't worried about their money this year.
And Nas is such a good, because he was one of those characters.
He was one of those players,
not to a negative extent, but he was naturally worried about his money. It's a good place, for that to come.
And so when that's taken care of, you can then, and it's just the reality of life in the NBA. Okay, I've gotten paid. Now I can really put the team first, or I can maybe make that extra sacrifice for the team, or not have to worry as much about getting my numbers because, okay, I've been paid now. And he made a point that some of the guys, who maybe do have contracts up after this year, like a Mike Conley or Kyle Anderson, those are the type of players that are realize that like with success comes a good payday
at that age. Man.
Right. No matter what your role is on a winning team, you're going to get paid. Like I've heard, somebody, in the locker room once kind of tell some of the young guys, like, look at what just happened to Bruce Brown. Like Bruce Brown was a role player, bench player on a championship team. And then look what happened this summer. One of the players definitely brought that to the attention of the young guys in the room and was like, look what can happen if you're Bruce Brown in that scenario, for sure.
It's a really good anecdote. Chris, let's move over to talking about quickly just two other things that I've been noticing in the last few games that are not Cat and Ant specific, and they're going to be about Kyle and Rudy, or that I want to hit on at least. I asked both Finch and Kyle after the game about Kyle's clearly playing like point guard more often, like bringing the ball up the floor. Kyle's always referred to himself as a point guard, but he's more with the Wolves been a point guard, and he's someone we like to get the ball to. Now he's bringing it up and getting him into action more and more often. And I'm thinking about this through the lens of, Kyle's struggled to shoot this year. And I think that is a smart way in which to kind of take that weakness out of the equation. You see like Aaron Gordon, that happens in Denver a lot. If he's, if they're not confident in his shot, or a team's defend the Wolves, right? If they're defending him in a way that almost dares him to shoot threes, they'll have Aaron Gordon run the point and get them into their action, because you have to respect the ball. You don't always have to respect the open 3-point shooter if they're not making shots. And I didn't, and I wasn't necessarily expecting it from either of them to point to like, we're putting the ball in Kyle's hands a little bit more at the point because the shot isn't there. So I can't say that either Finch or Kyle acknowledge that as the reason that they're doing it more often. But I'm watching the game and I'm like, man, Kyle's bringing the ball up when Mike Conley's on the floor often. And so I think there is, or I'm seeing a tactical advantage to that in some ways of if Kyle Anderson is the point guard, then there is not going to be as many of those record scratch kind of like catches on the perimeter where he's forced to take a shot that he's not making right now, or pass up a shot that he should be taking. And just for the last couple of games, that's been profitable. Kyle had 10 assists in that last game. I also think it's noteworthy that it didn't come at the cost of Mike Conley playmaking too. Conley had 9 assists in that game as well. But I would just say to, people watching, tonight or against Philadelphia, or just to think about, if Kyle Anderson is becoming a spacing problem for this team, this is one of the answers that they have is, all right, go be the 6'9" point guard for this team. And I just think it's wise by Finch to do and smart of Kyle to embrace.
Well, it's smart. It gives Mike a little bit of a break in a way too. Yeah. Obviously, this team needs Mike Conley to be the organizer, to be the guy that initiates most of the time. But Mike Conley's also, a 40-ish% 3-point shooter as well, and to have him be the guy for a few possessions spacing the floor as opposed to Kyle on these possessions is something that you should probably be doing for a little while each night, and maybe looking to get Mike the ball on the swing arounds when the defense is shifting. So I think it makes sense. You're more plugged into that area than I am. I hadn't really noticed that too much, but hearing you talk,
look for it tonight in the game.
I'll look for it tonight.
Yeah.
I will. Yeah.
I think
especially when Conley's on the floor with him.
That's why that was really the thing that started sticking out to me, because we obviously we've seen Kyle bring the ball up the floor last year too,
right.
But I was like, it was at our seats. Mike Conley kept running to the left corner, which is right in front of us at Target Center. And I'm like, this is interesting. Like, he's the point guard, right? But it was over and over again. And I wish I could remember. I don't think Rudy was on the floor there. Like, maybe it's whenever Rudy is on the floor, you want to have Mike be that point guard, so you have that pick and roll threat. But maybe I'll go back and look.
Well, I mean, just think about it from a spacing perspective. If you have Kyle and Rudy, I mean, they have good chemistry together, but I mean, that's two. If teams are going to start playing off of Kyle because he's not going to shoot it or won't shoot effectively, that's going to muck up the spacing for sure. Based on how defenses are going to play those two guys at the same time.
Yeah, and I just don't really see that much downside to it yet. Like, we haven't seen Kyle been getting like picked in the backcourt a lot when he's bringing it up, and I guess or maybe I haven't thought about it enough to think of what the opportunity cost is there. But I think we know what the cost was of Kyle not making threes and stop taking threes. That had become a thing right over the past few weeks. But maybe this is at least a half measure of an answer there. Related to Rudy, and this will be the last thing. It's been, I mean, I don't know who's been the most valuable, impactful, whatever player, but Rudy certainly has a case for that on this team this season. But the last 3-4 games have not been as Rudy dominant of games. Foul trouble has been a factor in those two, but if these have been Rudy's quote unquote worst games of the season or worst stretch of the season, what do you think is going into that? Or are we just putting like 90% of it on foul trouble?
I think a lot of it is the foul trouble. B, look, Ant is back. So the offensive output for Rudy is naturally going to go down. I mean, Rudy's, it's no coincidence. I think I said at the time that Rudy's best offensive nights of the year were coming because Ant was out. More opportunity, has, more usage has opened up when Ant isn't in the lineup, and, if you throw Kyle Anderson out there or Nikhil kind of in that spot, those are players who have good chemistry with Rudy, who, maybe better chemistry than Ant currently has. It's getting better with Ant, but other lineups and combos maybe know how to utilize Rudy better, like that Charlotte game being the prototypical example of that. So I think it's just natural that that's happening. That Ant is also back in the lineup as well. So I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Well, and I also thought the third quarter when the game turned against the Pacers, there was like a 1-point, 2-point game or whatever at halftime, and that's what Rudy was, back in the game after foul trouble in the first half, and it's when you started seeing that impact again defensively. And once that Rudy defensive impact happens, it activates the defense, the other 4 players in the defense, which I think activates kind of like the pace and the energy of the group, which activates the offense. So there's not a lot of stats I think you could look at from Rudy in that third quarter in particular that'd be like, yep, that's, the reason, because they were all benefiting from the plus minus of that. All 5 players are on the floor. But that's the thing, right, man? Rudy at the rim activates the defense, but activates the offense. And to that end, I don't mark the Pacers game as like a bad Rudy game by any means. I'm just mostly noting that, I don't know, I've done 5, 6, 7 podcasts this year. Like, is this the best Rudy of all time? And you're like, okay, well, this is a little bit different. This has been a little bit different, and
it's more subdued, and after some of those wins earlier in the season, like, you had like the Chet Holmgren sequence in the OKC game where, people are clipping it and being like, look at Rudy Gobert on this possession. We haven't had as many of those moments, that go viral. So it makes it seem like he's. But
the values in the subtleties, right?
Like, and that's always been the case for Rudy. That's what he's always said. That's what teams have always said. Front offices have always said. And where the disconnect is between what basketball people think of Rudy Gobert and like what the Twitter
Sure.
casuals think of Rudy Gobert,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always been the dividing line.
Right.
But yeah, we'll see tonight. I'm excited for this matchup
Bam
tonight,
tonight and
for
Embiid on
Philly.
Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a good little test. We'll see if they can survive this without losing consecutive games.
Yes,
Probably their toughest two-game stretch
Mm-hmm.
on the road. It's a tough little trip.
Right. Yeah, no, we're still in the midst of the hardest run
Mhm.
of the season for this team. So, we'll see. Miami will be a good test tonight. Like we said, they're back at pretty much full strength. I think everybody except for Kyle Lowry is playing for them. Chris will be there at the arena. So, following him on Twitter for in-game or pre-game tweets and that sort of thing. And then the game story as well at the Star Tribune, startribune.com. Chris, thank you for hanging out in a very fluorescently lighted media room.
My girl Mariah would absolutely detest this lighting. But this lighting is like a nightmare to her. Go on, Twitter or whatever, and just kind of search Mariah Carey talking about lighting. She has to be like
This is a thing?
America's foremost expert on how to properly light photos and videos. And this is
not it.
If she goes to hell when she dies, this is what it's going to look like for her. 100%.
Oh, that's good. All right, man. He's Christopher Hine. Follow him there, and I will be back after the Miami game to talk with Jace about what happens there. Until then, he's Chris. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.